Hello and welcome to the Climate Conscious Podcast. I am your host, Dirval Barzi, and this is the Demystify series. Join us as we unravel pressing climate and sustainability challenges and innovative solutions. Today, we're demystifying sustainability planning. On today's show, I am joined by Petal Joseph of i3 Green Consulting Limited. Hi, Petal.
Hi, Durval. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. After being awarded a full academic scholarship, Petal Joseph migrated from Tobago to North Carolina in 1998. She holds degrees in environmental science and geography and also earned an MSc in planning and development. Petal served as the first regional planner at the Ministry of Local Government, placed at the municipal level. Petal attained accreditation in 2015 as a Green Associate in the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design LEED credit rating system. She has been actively involved with the Trinidad and Tobago Society of Planners since 2010 and the Trinidad and Tobago Green Building Council since 2014. Petal, you have such an interesting background. Tell us about the evolution of your career from environmental science and geography to becoming a sustainability planner and lead consultant.
Yeah, it was interesting even as I lived it. It didn't make sense at a glance. When I looked at the page, I was like, what's really going on? Where am I going with all of this? And oftentimes my mother would say, girl, just settle down on one thing and stick with it, but I was really just following my intuition. And after graduating with my double major, I went into nonprofit work, unlike many of my Trinidadian colleagues who were graduating at the same time. I found my niche in nonprofit work. I was actually part of the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network, which was a nonprofit organization based in grassroots work in a small town in North Carolina. And that exposed me to grassroots activism in minority and low income communities. And that it sparked something. It ignited something inside me, And the work that I did with them over about 2 years centered around social justice, climate, and environmental issues. So it really set a foundation. While I was matriculating at North Carolina Central University, I had been introduced to a video game called SimCity. I fell in love with that game. I actually became a little addicted. And I thought at the time, if I could do this in real life, then, I'd be set. I'd be happy. This is what I would do as a dream job. And so that concept, that seed was planted with land use planning and the integrated approach to development of any kind of space. So between the nonprofit work that gave me the understanding and appreciation for grassroots driven solutions and definitely displayed the importance of democratic participation in a decision-making process, right? Once I had that and I married that with the interests I had for planning, when I returned home, though, to Tobago, I would have reverted to an interest in the marine environment. So I went back to my environmental science niche and I found a job in the Division of Marine Resources and Fisheries. And I really thought that I would be going back to like a childhood dream of becoming a marine biologist. I was back home, water was everywhere. And island life was back at the forefront of my mind. So I started off in December of 2000 and 5 at the Department of Fisheries, the Division of Fisheries. And by August of '06, I was charting off to Trinidad from Tobago to start my master's in planning. Out of the blue, I had responded to an ad for a scholarship and I won the award. So very quickly, I switched again from the marine thing to planning. And I said, oh, this degree sounds like the SimCity game in real life. So let me go pursue this. It was a 2-year program. Let me pursue this master's and see what happens. And so out of that, I ended up in urban and regional planning. Did a 6-year tenure at the Ministry of Local Government. And while I was there, I pursued green certification because I actually started to become very disgruntled and disillusioned with the way our approach to development was done locally. And I remember hearing about LEED. And so I went back and started doing research on certification in sustainability. And that's when I came upon not just LEED, because LEED wasn't very accessible in those days. I came upon something called Green Advantage, which was the premier certification for professionals in the construction industry in North America. And in 2011, I jumped on board and became certified as a Green Advantage practitioner. And eventually in 2015, shortly after I found the Green Building Council, I started training with them to take the LEED exam. And so I earned my LEED certification, as you mentioned, in 2015, January of 2015. So I just celebrated 10 years of having that particular designation.
Petal, you mentioned that it didn't make sense on paper, but in hindsight, you can see that every step has led you to where you are now.
Definitely, definitely. And that is what, when I finally settled on sustainability planner, because that's kind of a name I gave to myself, planners that were coming out of the program typically went into one of two streams. They were either focused on human settlements and those issues around human settlements, or they were more into the natural and environmental side of planning and maybe getting into the climate change and those kinds of aspects. But when I met with my advisor, my second year, and she said, well, what stream do you want to take? And I said, I don't want to take a stream. I want to be able to speak holistically across the board. She said, oh, well, I don't know what we'll call you. We'll have to call you a generalist planner. I said, whatever you call me is fine, but I don't want to be pigeonholed into the left or the right. Because to me, they always had the same kind of way. The human is just as important as the environment. They work together. And that was kind of where my headspace was. I never really fit in anywhere specifically. So I created a niche for myself because my interest really was in bringing sustainability as a lens across the entire discipline of planning and environmental science and geography. And so you're right. In hindsight, when I stood back and I looked at, it's like having that mosaic and you look at it up close or you look at it further back and it's two different images. That is how I felt when I did that look back 20 years. And I said, wow, it seems circumtuitous, but it was actually very well designed because you needed all these very different parts to inform this position you're in now.
Yes, I would even say
Yeah.
divinely ordained.
Yeah, I do feel that there is a definite spiritual element and component to my work. I do feel spiritually attuned to what I am doing. And in fact, I'm Roman Catholic by faith, and some of the church's work, in fact, one of the very central pillars of the church's work is social justice. And I really didn't know that until I was much older, but when I did discover that, I said, oh, okay, it actually helped me even grow in my faith. understanding and recognizing just how important social justice and being stewards of the environment are central to the Roman Catholic faith. So yeah, there is a spiritual element to it, Duval. You're quite right.
So, here on the Climate Conscious podcast, we explore the various dimensions of sustainable development, which is about striking a balance between three priorities: the environment, the economy, and society, while also ensuring future generations have access to the same level of resources. Some of us may be wondering, what exactly is sustainability planning and how does that fit in to the concept of sustainable development? I think you are best placed to explain that to us.
Okay, well, let me try. Because I've always actually found the term sustainable development a bit of a, what's the word? A redundancy almost. As you mentioned, sustainable development came out of a Will Commission report called the Brundtland Report in around 1987, right? Our Common Future. And that report, as you say, they recognized how human activity would have impacted on the environment that it relied on to support its development and its growth, right? So the commission focused on issues of population and food security, species loss, energy, industry, those things that matter to us, right? Human settlement as we grow. And it linked, as I said, the issues of poverty reduction and gender equity to environmental conservation. The report also noted that environmental limits existed to economic growth. So in other words, they recognized very definitively that there was a link between poverty and reduced sustainability. And that accelerated the environmental pressure. And the report actually recommended that to address this would be to take a more sustainable approach to development, meaning create a balance between the economy and the ecology. And by creating the balance between, as you say, the economy and the ecology, then the people, the third pillar, would benefit, right? And what was the best way to create that balance? The vehicle is planning, the discipline of planning. And so when I hear the term sustainable planning, I sometimes, kind of cringe because any planning done well and effectively should be sustainable. It should, that should be one of the outcomes of good planning, that it is sustainable. So really and truly sustainable planning is that art and science of finding the harmony. It's more than just a balance, it's a harmony because there's so many different interests, interrelated issues and cross-cutting themes that come into play when you're looking at a sustainable approach to development.
So, your recent consultancy work includes serving as a sustainability planner and lead consultant for the Tobago Airport Terminal project. So, I'd love to hear about that experience and also any challenges you may have faced in this role.
Right. Yeah, that was an interesting consultancy for a number of reasons. Primarily because it occurred during the COVID lockdown and, everything came to a halt, in particular construction projects. So it was work, but it was very constrained kind of work we did. And, every challenge really presents its own opportunities, right? So right off the bat, we had the language barrier challenge. They did not have on staff an interpreter to work, with the technical Chinese crew and any local counterparts that they may have to deal with.
So, just for everyone's benefit, the project was being run by a Chinese firm.
Yeah, the construction of the new Tobago Airport Terminal was awarded to China Railway Construction, Caribbean company. So they are a massive firm with a number of international projects under their belt. They've also done several of those projects right here in Trinidad and Tobago, quite a few in Tobago itself. So they're not unfamiliar with the physical domain, right? But the language constraint remained. So that was the initial challenge and barrier for me, getting over that. Because one of the premises of LEAD is that it's an integrated approach. You have all hands on deck. You have a very multidisciplinary team always at the table. It's that very participatory, collaborative type of approach to development, to construction. And certainly when you have a case where you don't speak the language, that becomes a problem. So it was a struggle for me in my capacity, specifically as a lead consultant, to function when communication was, their English was limited and my Chinese non-existent. So you can only imagine. We spoke a lot through apps, which doesn't make for very technical, very fruitful technical discussion. So that was the main challenge I had. And then, of course, there were just some cultural differences that didn't gel. You have an organizational culture from halfway across the world, just plopped in the middle of your Tobago landscape. And it was problematic in some instances. Men, women, you name it, old, young, there were all these discrepancies that you had to kind of, on a daily basis, just figure out, how to navigate. So those were my two main challenges in executing the work. I did feel a lot of the times that they came with an idea set. So most of my functions were administrative in nature. In terms of the influence that I was able to lend to the design or projects that were incorporated into the design of that, it never happened. I certainly didn't have any support. I was the only local technical person on the team at that time. Yeah, it left me feeling very despondent because I saw that project as an opportunity for us Tobagonians to really have a say in what it became. And I realized once I was physically there on the ground and part of the project, that very little of that input was happening. So it was a bittersweet kind of experience for me in that sense.
Thanks for sharing that experience, Petal. It sounds to me like having a lead consultant was more of a tick in the box rather than an intentional approach to integrating sustainability.
Yeah, and it's funny that you put it that way, but that is exactly how I felt. So I shouldn't say it's funny that you put it that way. You hit the nail on the head. That is exactly how I felt. And in fact, one of the things that has been brought up by people who would have even developed the lead rating system from back in the early 2000s. One of the critiques that they have is that often it is approached by administrators and owners of a project as checking boxes. I mean, the whole concept of lead is checklists. So it's not unheard of for projects to fall into that. They just want to make the marks to get certified. And this particular project, in order to get LEED certified, you had to have someone with LEED credentials on board. And so, yes, I do feel like it was just checking the box, especially now that things are coming into the public domain and there's no mention of it being a LEED certified project. It's not being marketed as green building space for potential clients to occupy, right? So I do feel like it was a greenwashing, and it hurts because I was a part of that. I feel like I was used to fulfill an ulterior motive. So I have, as I said, bittersweet feelings around that experience.
So, Patel, what are some of your recommendations for really integrating sustainability and green principles at the national and even the regional levels here in the Caribbean?
So it brings us back to the basics, education and awareness. So I would say it's two-tiered. I would say education of professionals and practitioners. They're the ones who require the training, the upskilling, retooling, and the continuous professional development because plenty of us earn degrees here in Trinidad and Tobago and we stop learning after that. It's as if we reach, you know? And in sustainability, one thing I have learned being in this field for about 20 years is that it's always changing. Innovation is such a big part of sustainability. Things are always being done differently, being improved and being refined. And so as the professionals, as the ones who are doing the work, we need to be sharp, right? In order to respond to the challenges that we are facing today. So nationally, I would love to see sustainability incorporated into school curricula and organizational culture, right? So you're getting it at all levels. You're hitting them as they're coming up through the school system, and then you're hitting them when they're in the workplace so that it becomes infused. It becomes so a part and ingrained that you don't think about it because it's just the way you are, right? It's your way of being. So that's the education part. And then awareness. The awareness is for the wider, is for the general population and the decision makers. They need exposure and edification. They need to see things that worked, campaigns, demonstration projects, hear success stories. They just need to have that awareness. And I think with those two arms, the education and awareness working, at least on the national level, we could make a strong start. The other part of it for me is honoring identity and embracing authenticity. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I think that there is immense value to culturally relevant approaches. And that is in design, in architecture, in choice of materials, right? They could actually provide us with contemporary solutions. So the tapia houses of old that many of us in Trinidad and Tobago now think is long time thing, actually are more efficient at keeping your homes cooler, right? Than building a concrete house and sticking an AC on it. But don't tell them that because that is like couch and grass. Who want to live in that? Yeah. So regionally, climate action and response initiatives should be tailored to the specific local context of the territory and be informed by traditional knowledge and experiences. So you're really digging deep because even though we are considered one region, we are a diverse region. And that is in terms of our demographics, our physical landscapes, you name it. The Caribbean is varied. And so we can't possibly have one or two approaches that will fit all of us. It's important for us to know who we are and apply the solutions that are appropriate to our cultural context.
Patel, you made such powerful points. I completely agree with your proposal for a focus on education and awareness. And I know we're speaking about planning, but I think this is relevant across the board. For any professional, continuing development should be important. Understanding the importance of sustainability, recognizing the immense threat of climate change. Every professional needs to be engaged in upskilling and retooling, keeping up with innovation in order to improve and refine our toolkits. And yes, definitely awareness As you know, that's a big part of my platform, bringing awareness around climate change and sustainability issues to the layman, breaking it down into simple terms so that, just planting that seed.
Yes.
Again, I'm so glad that you're able to share your wealth of experience and also be vulnerable about the challenges that you have faced in this journey. It's never smooth sailing, it's never, one straight path, but
Girl, I was around the people who would have initiated environmental justice movement in the US. North Carolina is the bedrock of the environmental justice movement. And I would have been exposed to some giants in the game. And they always refer to it as, being in the trenches and we're soldiers. And at first I was like, it's the Black Power thing and they just, a little dramatic. But no, this is work that will break you. You really do need to develop that kind of backbone that can take anything. I will bend, I do not break, because it can wear you down. And I have had those moments where I felt like giving up. I was like, Lord, don't I deserve a nice fancy life too? Why do I want to save the world? The world doesn't want to be saved. But you have those moments, and then you have the other moments where it's like this. I have conversation with a like-minded kindred spirit, and I'm ignited. And I have goosebumps talking to you, so I live and I breathe sustainability. And I just want to be able to impact one person into thinking differently. And that one person will probably impact another person. And if that is the ripple I created, Val, I think I would have fulfilled my purpose. And that is really all I3 Green is about.
yes, the highs and lows of the journey of those called to sustainability. And it is indeed a calling. I'm always inspired to be in community with those who have answered the calling and committed to it. Having said all that, Petal, what advice would you give to aspiring sustainability planners and sustainability consultants?
You mean aside from run? No, no, no. I welcome anyone who thinks that this is what they want to do and this is their calling. For me, I would say it came down to three C's for me. It was the three things I didn't know I needed most, if that makes sense. The three things I didn't know I needed most when I started off this journey, right? Number one, confidence. I did not have the confidence. I didn't know it at the time because I thought I was this very self-sufficient, independent young woman, educated and empowered and all those great things. But to actually earn a livelihood off of this passion that you have for something that most people see as an afterthought, when the reality of all of that sunk in, I realized I was not as confident as I needed to be. So you do need to develop a strong sense of self-awareness and that confidence to pursue it, because it's going to require you to be courageous in many different ways. Clarity was the other C for me. Clarity of purpose, clarity of thought, just how to approach it, because as you said, everybody comes into this kind of from a different angle, right? And so you have to figure out where in this vast field of sustainability is your sweet spot. What is your niche? For me, it was where environment and planning met. For someone else, it might be health and gender, but all of those issues can be looked at through the sustainability lens. And I encourage all practitioners in different sectors to take some kind of course or training or class in sustainability in their field. You don't have to do it in something unrelated, do it sustainability related to your field and see how it moves you, but having that clarity was another C that was very important. And the last but not least, community. As I said, I was a very independent thinking person in my early 20s. And I was very sure that I could do it on my own. I didn't need nobody, to do this whole thing. And quickly realized that community, that sense of belonging, that support, that being part of a village that understands your struggle and the issues that you're confronted with and the things that you have to consider. It was imperative just to be able to embark on the journey of entrepreneurship in sustainability. Having that community was absolutely essential. And then too, I think of community in the sense of addressing just the age we're in. The world is in an age, maybe at one point in time, being an individual, independent, and coming up with your own solutions was applicable. It was getting the job done. But at this stage of the game, we're at a different level of consciousness for us to get solutions to the issues that we're facing. So community mattered to me. And yeah, that's the advice I would give. Look for the things that you didn't know you need the most. Yeah, and it might be those 3 C's.
Confidence, clarity, and community. Thank you, Petal, for helping us to demystify sustainability planning. I really appreciate your transparency about the challenges that you have faced navigating being in this field, as well as your wise words of encouragement for upcoming practitioners. As we close, is there anything you'd like to share about i3 Consulting?
Yes, definitely. We are open for business. So feel free to reach out, connect, and let's discuss possibilities. I do have a website that's under reconstruction, but it is at i3green, that's little I, the number 3, the word green.com. I'm also on Facebook at i3 Green Consultants, IG at green.building.consultant. And I'm also on LinkedIn under i3 Green Consultants. So you can find me on social media, connect with me, ask me a question, throw me a comment, start a debate about something. I'm all game.
Thank you, Petal.
Thank you so much for having me, Duval. This was an absolute pleasure. I do look forward to chatting again.
If you found this episode insightful, we'd love for you to share it with your network, leave us a review, or let us know your thoughts on our social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Climate Conscious podcast so you won't miss another episode of the Demystify series.